Welcome all. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. This is the Africa e-mobility week, and we're excited to continue the conversations from the week before, where we've been chatting all manner of topics around the e-mobility field in Africa. And this is a continuation. We have a great lineup of speakers, panelists, and moderators to support us in getting through some of these conversations around this emerging sector on the continent. The session today is quite exciting, and we have our moderators and panelists in the house. I will now hand it over to the moderator of the day, who's Tricia, and she'll introduce the rest of the panel as we get started with the presentations. Again, please feel free to join us in an hour's time at 12 o'clock, where we shall go on to the next session, and we have one lined up at 3 o'clock East Africa time. Without further ado, Tricia, please go ahead.
Thank you. Welcome everyone to the Africa e-mobility week. This session is on planning innovative business models for financing commercial electric vehicles. My name is Trisha Nina. I'm a project associate at CIFAO Kenya, and I deal with a lot of energy projects, and I'm very passionate about the e-mobility sector and renewability. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome our speakers, who will be from Jet Motors, Solar Taxi, and Ox Delivers. Colin, I think you can start us off if you're ready.
Sure. Thank you very much, Tricia. And thank you to everybody involved in the week for having us along and having Ox along. It's a real pleasure to be here as part of the growing African e-mobility ecosystem. I'll just take a few minutes just to introduce myself and what Ox is up to. Tricia, would you mind just confirming that you can see the screen?
Yes, I can. Awesome.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I'm Colin Tebbett. I used to run Ox Rwanda, which is the first company in which we're running Ox services. As of the summer, I handed over Ox Rwanda to the team that we'd recruited in Rwanda. We're now a 65 strong, led by Francine Uwamahoro, Ox Rwanda Managing Director, which leaves me free to look at raising capital for the growing business and also to engage in partnerships across the e-mobility ecosystem. I'll just give a little bit of an introduction to what we do. So we're here talking today about innovative business models for financing commercial electric vehicles. Ox is in a particular sweet spot here because we operate the commercial vehicles. That means that we have the same concerns as all fleet operators, which are namely cost and capability. With cost, we need to reduce the fleet total ownership cost, also known as TOC, which is the lowest cost per kilometer that we drive. And this is more important to us than sourcing a cheap vehicle. With capability, we need a truck that can drive around 160 kilometers off-road every day, carrying upwards of 2 tons of various different types of goods. The solution shown here is us running a commercial operation in upcountry Rwanda with conventional ICE trucks. These figures are 1,500 customers, 1,300 tons per month, $500,000 worth of revenue per year are today's, and they are growing. This is proving that demand is there in rural areas, something that we set out to do just 18 months ago. In Rwanda, we have 4 depots, and we'll open up a 5th in Musanze, one of Rwanda's secondary cities next year. Currently, we're running in Rwanda Toyotas, Mitsubishis, Mahindras, Dongfengs, along with 2 prototype Ox trucks. The reason for running this commercial operation with ICE trucks is to teach Ox the cost per kilometer required and the capabilities demanded of our electric truck. And why are we developing an electric truck? A picture that you can see there at the bottom right. It's because nobody else is. By developing it, we control the supply chain of parts and maintenance, and we can spend a little bit more upfront to bring down that total ownership cost, that cost per kilometer. So just a couple of seconds on where we got to with lessons learned in financing commercial vehicles. In 18 months, we've learned a lot, including on finance models. One of the fellow panelists, George, was on a panel I saw 2 weeks ago talking about investment into Africa. All the panelists had similar stories that we've experienced, that EVs are early stage and funds are still raising money. That puts us inside the ecosystem in a particular advantage. We can work with the funds to develop the targets under which they can deploy funds. The key lessons learned in the last 18 months of raising money for OX are on the right. Number one, if you're seeking debt, you need to prove out your vehicle platform. In Rwanda, even Mitsubishis are expensive to finance. And if you're coming with a new vehicle like OX, or you're coming with a new EV platform, then you need to package your story carefully. This packaging is important. Your story is different, our story is different to equity funders than to debt, or from impact investors to bank credit committees to the development finance institutions. At OX, we're still trying to get this right. We're only 18 months in. So a little bit of what we're doing is that we're splitting out ops, our operations impact, into the number of customers that we serve from a depot, into CO2, the savings that are available from EVs, and the profit, the results there that you see in the middle. We will be going to the capital markets with this arrangement next year. And we're splitting out the debt models for our trucks and depots into a finance story that's suitable for that audience. That's part of why we're running commercial operations today with third-party trucks, to prove to these credit committees that the depots can service the debt. And lastly, with the lessons learned, if I have time, nobody is going to succeed in this nascent industry alone. We're all dependent on government policy, on charging infrastructure, battery care, and a lot more. And this is why I'm excited for this conference and the enabling ecosystem behind it. That's me. Thank you, Tricia.
Thank you so much, Colin. Aaron, pass it on to you. Sorry?
We have all the panelists, so please just go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. So for those who've been joining, this is the session on planning innovative business models for financing commercial electric vehicles. And I am Tricia Nina. We just heard from Colin, who is from Ox Delivers. Thank you, Colin. And next, I think we can hear from Joseph from Jet Motors. Joseph?
I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can. Thank you. Go ahead.
I'm pleased to be partaking in this seminar, and it's a good one. I know the whole Africa and the world is due for something like this. So my name is Joseph. I'm from Jet System Automobile Company, known as Jet Motor Company in Nigeria. We operate in Nigeria. We have our office in Lagos. Well, we are about 4 years old. And since we started with the aim of leading mobility, not only in Nigeria, but in Africa. Because as at the time we started, we noticed that a lot of people have misconception about electric vehicles, about going green. And especially in Nigeria, where our main source of income as a country is from sales of crude oil. So we notice that if something is not done, Nigeria will be left behind because people will believe there is no need for us to support the e-mobility. With this idea, can we do something different? So the company came up. But we know our people then that for us to be able to achieve anything, Nigeria would like to start from known to unknown. So we started from ICE. We know we have the aim of producing vehicles that will be used commercially. That is what we call passenger buses that can carry 13, 12, 13 passengers for a trip. Because in Nigeria, majority of the mobility, moving from one place to another in Nigeria is done through road transportation. The rail system is not that where it's supposed to be. The air, greater percentage of Nigerians cannot afford this. So what is available for Nigerian is, in fact, 90% of Nigerian move through road. And because of that, we started with what we call commercial buses. So we started assembling commercial buses. Our prime product was jet mover. So we started doing this, and we needed to make it unique. It was unique in shape, unique in size, unique in the facility that the vehicle offers, and then unique in quality. Because we did it, we assembled it with Nigeria in mind, with the road condition of Nigeria in mind, with the topography in mind, and every other thing, and knowing fully well that some people can stay in a bus for 12 hours, which means it's apart from safety, it has to be comfortable. So we try to combine all safety, comfort, and everything. And we came with innovation. Can we have a vehicle where you can have your own entertainment system to you while you are in a journey? So it means that journey you have to enjoy, you have the comfort, you enjoy the journey. So while there, you can browse, you can watch movie, you can play music, just as we have it in aircrafts. So we did this, and by the time people were getting used to us, then we now moved to what we call electric cargo van. We started with electric cargo van because we know the peculiarity of Nigeria. We know if you want to do commercial, it means you are moving from one city to the other, and then you will need to invest a lot in charging infrastructure. But if it is cargo van, it can be used by logistic company within a city. So we started that, knowing fully well that you can use it within, for example, Lagos and Abuja. So if you have few charging points, few charging stations, then you can use it within. And it really is been a very good experience for us, for our customers. It's been nice. But having said this, we have a lot of challenges in Nigeria. For example, apart from finance, which in Nigeria is a very tough call, because finance in Nigeria, it's most often you have to go to commercial banks, and commercial banks don't normally lend long. They lend short, which is 2 years, maximum 2.5 years. And the kind of things we want to do, it means you have to invest in equipment, you have to invest in advertising, you have to invest in R&D. So borrowing short will not do it for us. That's one. Number two, the interest rate in Nigeria as of today, so some banks are charging as high as 24%, 25%. So it means doing business, if you have to borrow at that rate, it means you have to look for other means of making money, because that rate is not sustainable. And apart from this, we all know the peculiarity of Nigeria when it comes to power, because if you are going to go into e-mobility, you need power to charge your station. This is another challenge for us. Then the investment in infrastructure. Charging piles are not cheap, and we need government involvement. And as it is now, the government involvement in all this is still very, very low in Nigeria. And what that means is for us to be able to scale, for any company to go into e-mobility in Nigeria and be able to succeed, government must provide the necessary infrastructure. And not only that, provide the policy. But will it be out of place if there is a policy that says if you want to be a mall where, let's say, 100,000 people will visit in a day, that mall must have a point for a charging point for at least 10 vehicles at a time. Without that, the planning authority don't approve. So these are the little things we think policy-wise can be done. And then government taking deliberate effort in attracting investment into this sector. So these are the things we are looking at. And not only that, with tax policy can favor industry like this. And this is where we are. We are looking at what can we do differently. We have started. We know there are challenges, but we are not focusing on the challenges. We are focusing on finding solutions to those challenges. We know it will be tough, but we are pushing, and we know we soon get there. Gradually, with the support of everybody, with technology that is advanced, we know we can achieve. In putting in training our people, in getting good personnel, in getting the necessary infrastructure, in investing in technology so that we'll be able to achieve this.
Thank you, Joseph. I'd like to also invite George from Solar Taxi to make his presentation. Warren, has George joined the meeting?
I'm just confirming. Did we get to?
Yes, he's in.
Yes, George is in. To get him on. George should be able to unmute himself and speak.
Hi everyone.
Thank you.
So I think the panelists have spoken largely a number of things on. So I'll briefly to talk about what we are doing here at Solar Taxi, and then looking at more of questions of to fill in some of the answers that might be needed. So Solar Taxi is an e-mobility company based in Ghana. Started operating in 2018. We started from building a prototype electric solar powered vehicle, and then we work our way through scaling it up. We currently locally assemble two-wheelers, three-wheelers, and four-wheelers. That's the electric bike and electric tricycle, and then electric car. So we provide free maintenance, and then we also provide free charging for our vehicles. We have two assembly plants, one in Accra, one in Kumasi, and that is tend to be our main focus in terms of operation. We are in 4 cities in Ghana. We also export our vehicles to a number of West African countries like Togo, Benin, Cote d'Ivoire. We have a lot of customers that we do export our vehicles to them from. Now, Solar Taxi also has a digital platform in which we provide ride hailing to people that need some form of mobility services. Our focus is to provide mobility service for the modern African. So using our platform, you're able to order electric vehicle as a ride. to take it wherever you have to go. We are far cheaper than using any other app, and most people prefer to use our platform on. And on the question around financing, I think is a very huge issue, and something that it takes a lot to or a lot of stakeholders to come on board to deal with it. In terms of we've been finance, it's a different part where the market is quite still new. A lot of local financiers don't really have the full grasp of the industry. Some consider it too early or too risky. So getting funded locally is kind of a bit challenging. We have been able to make some stride through that a little bit, but it's still a big challenge. And we are looking for policies that really could enable environment for more financing to flow to e-mobility companies on. And then as some of the as the other panel mentioned, one big good way to create value is being able to having broad part of the local value chain being based here in Africa. So that allow a number of investments to be done, and also being able to create jobs and improve upon the product customization, and then making them more affordable. So, but for this to happen, we need a broad financing to come in. And so that is that challenge on that downstream part when it coming to e-mobility companies, e-mobility startups. So then we have the upstream part, that's those that in terms of making electric vehicles accessible to a lot of people, providing the mobility service at affordable and accessible rate. And that presents also a very big challenge. The cost of e-mobility vehicles or electric vehicles are still relatively high, even though we are currently edging close to price parity. But yeah, you have about 30%, 40 to 50% higher than what a normal ICE vehicle can cost you. And most people, in most African countries, there's no proper financing mechanism that allow people to finance an automobile and then pay over a period. So if you have to purchase a vehicle, you need to pay off one time, and that is a challenge. And that is not something that a lot of people can afford. That we have a growing middle class, but we don't have that purchasing power to be able to purchase a number of the vehicles or at the price in which we sell it. So being able to come up with a model that allow not at once payment but spread over time will increase more purchasing power and lower the bracket for more people to being able to get into the space of owning an electric vehicle. When it comes to our two-wheelers, the bikes, we are currently working with a number of financing partners to provide the bikes as asset financing to a number of young people that want to use them for commercial purpose, like ride hailing, and then food delivery or delivery. So in that case, they have a lower cost of operation, and then they can also assess the asset because then we have a third party financing it, in which they pay over a period of time, in typically which we call the what to pay. So they use the bikes, they don't make any down payment, they start to work with it, and then on week basis or month-to-month basis, they get to pay for it. In the period of 2 years, they get to own that. So that is quite innovative model that can work in our context, since we don't have strong purchasing power to pay things offhand on. Then a similar thing applies to the cars also, where we have financing partners, local, international financiers coming in to provide this similar work and pay model in which they work with it and then pay over time on. So for this to work, you need three partners. You have the asset provider like Solar Taxi, you have the financing company, and then you have the rider or driver as a party to work with this asset. So create a three-way that allows such access to be provided on. But this has to be scaled. There's still a couple of challenges with it. Identification and addressing is also a challenge in Africa. So scaling presents its own risk. But hopefully, I think we can build up such a work and pay model to allow that to happen on. Then also other form of ownership would be in the lease to own, where you have individuals or corporate making a down payment and getting to pay over the period of time on. That has been something that has been in existence, but the biggest challenge has to be with interest rates. Interest rates in most African countries is quite high. So if you don't put measures in place, by the time you finish paying for the asset, you have to pay more than 80%, 70%, sometimes 100%. It's crazy, but sometimes as high as that as the interest payment on the original cost of the vehicle. That makes asset financing quite a big challenge because with the person look at spending more than or spending close to 70% of the total value of the assets by paying at the end of paying for it. It's very discouraging, and interest rate is not really working on that favor. But so we need a new way of dealing with such asset financing. Maybe financing of the companies, mobility companies can change the direction so that we don't need to depend on local banks with the rates that they give to finance such assets, and that could bring the assets a bit lower. For me, I believe the optimal financing, interest financing will probably lies between 10% to a maximum of 15%. I think that's what speak value to allow the bracket of the market that we want to go into to get into that space on. The last one I'll mention will be revenue sharing. We do this with a number of schools in which they acquire four-wheelers or bus, and then we share the revenue with them. We share the revenue over a period of 4 years. We have the majority. Then after the 5 years, we have the minority. Then the schools have the majority. So revenue sharing too is a way of financing that can also allow us to get a number of electric vehicles into the hands of Africans and make them more accessible, but not a luxury mobility option. So this is briefly what I would say, and maybe we'll use questions to respond to the rest.
Thank you so much. Warren, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Trisha. And thanks to all the panelists for their presentations. So Trisha, I was just checking whether there are additional questions from the audience around what the presentations have just been. So I've seen there's a question to George on what kind of volume 2, 3, and 4-wheelers are currently in the field. I don't know if, George, you can speak from your experience. And please, let's have our videos on just so that the audience can also get to interact with us and see us.
Well, in terms of volumes, I think currently we are doing the production, so that will bring our numbers to close to having close around 500 two-wheelers. We have close to about 40 four-wheelers, and then for tri-scales we have about 10 so far because it's a very restricted market that we operate in. We do production for tri-scale only after an order, so it's quite restricted. So the majority numbers now is on more on the two-wheelers and then followed by the four-wheelers. The four-wheelers is also because we don't have a full CKD plant. We are currently doing an SKD with very limited production. So that is the current numbers that we currently have on the ground.
Thank you. I have a question to Joseph from Anthony. Is Jet Motors registered as OEM? What of intervention loan from BOI supporting local OEMs, which range from 1% to 9% interest rates and long term? I agreed with you on policy and infrastructure development. Joseph, I don't know if you have a comment on that.
Okay, yes. The issue that's intervention fund, we've tried to assess the fund, and as I'm talking to you now, we are still processing. We are still on it, and we have gone far with the one the one now that we are processing. The fund is there. I don't want to. How will I put it? Well, yeah, the fund is there. We know that attached to it. Sorry, they call came in. A lot of conditions attached to it, but we are currently processing it, and with all things being equal, we'll be able to assess in first quarter of next year. It's part of the financing options that we are currently assessing. We are looking at, apart from trying to see if we can get equity investors, which we are already talking to some people. But again, we are looking at back of industry intervention fund.
I think, Joseph, you can also take this one. How are you managing charging for passengers, buses, for intercity transport?
Hello?
Yes, Joseph, thank you for answering. There's also another one here from David.
What's the question, please?
Yeah, David is asking, how are you managing charging for passenger buses for intercity transport?
Okay, as I said in my presentation, we have not started intercity transport for electric vehicle, because until we are able to provide infrastructure, because what we intend to start next year, but what we are planning to do is to look at cities that are close by. Currently, our vehicle can do between 250 to 270 kilometers on a full charge. So we are looking at if we can get divide routes into 200 kilometers distance. So for every 200 kilometers, we try to put a charging station or a charging point around that locations. So we have not started, but this is what we are working on. We are not going to go full blast throughout the whole country. We are just going to pick some highly routes that have high traffic, and we know that we can, and they are close by. Like, for example, if you know Nigeria, we are looking at Lagos to Ibadan, Lagos to Benin, and this area, they are very high traffic area, and they are not too far away. So we can easily put something between. But currently, what we are running is intra-city, especially with cargo. And we are also discussing with some people in authority on that manage intra-city transportation, so that we can start having our vehicle to do intra-city passenger movements. But for now, this we are.
Okay, thank you, Joseph. Colin, I don't know if I can get your comment on this question as well.
Hi, Trisha, I'm sorry.
Yes.
On which question, sorry?
How do you do the charging for the trucks or the powering for the trucks?
For the trucks. So we're currently electrifying the depots in Rwanda. So we operate, as I mentioned, from 4 depots at the moment, with a 5th opening next year. This places us in an easier situation, I think, than George and Joseph, in that we start our day from the depot and we end the day at the same depot. And for about 160 to 200 kilometers over 16, 17 hours, we're doing work within, say, 20, 30 kilometer radius of the depot. So that means that we're only ever so far from our charging point. So as we progressively electrify these depots, we're planning on charging overnight 10 trucks to a depot, which means that that's the capability that we need. We're also very lucky in Rwanda in that the rural electricity grid is quite strong. There's a surplus, it's relatively green, sources of energy. So as a productive use of energy for the grid, the OX depot is quite valuable. Hope that helps.
Just to interrupt you, Tricia. A follow-up question to Colin is, since we're chatting around business models for financing these commercial vehicles, what's the sort of barriers that exist in the market today, even from your experience, on why we're not having, fast enough adoption of these commercial vehicles? Are they making business sense in the first place? And then what are these sorts of barriers that we should be prioritizing?
Thank you, Warren. I think the one thing that myself, Joseph, and George have all mentioned are the issues in raising debt from banks. We at OX, for example, our depots pay a monthly, they service the debt with monthly payments to the banks. The banks that we've discussed are willing to extend credit to 30% of the value of the asset at relatively high interest rates on the franc. Now, 30% is great. However, we're actively looking at and working with guarantee funds. So, for example, there's FAGAS, FAGACE, which is Pan-African. There's Garantco as part of PIDGE, the Private Infrastructure Development Group in the UK, to issue these guarantees that will both extend the tenure from the 2.5, 3 years that Joseph was talking about and that we're experiencing in Rwanda, extending that out to something that allows us to service debt for longer. And also talking to DFIs and investors about creating a blended finance model that reduces the interest rate. So there are pots of capital out there for e-mobility. Not many at the moment, it must be said, but speaking to a number of potential financing partners, a lot of funds are coming up in the second half of next year, which are targeted towards e-mobility. So an opportunity perhaps in the next 6 months is to work with these funds and place the company in a good way in which we can benefit from this financing.
So we have a question from Dixon. Do you encounter any problems with your vehicle in terms of power when there is great cloud cover? I think this is to George specifically. If yes, how do you go about it?
So can you repeat the question again?
Do you encounter any problems with your vehicles in terms of power when there is great cloud cover?
No, we don't. So our vehicles are mainly designed to be either on vehicle solar integrated or off vehicle solar integrated, which means that for the off vehicle is the normal grid charging, and even for the on vehicle it has a solar integrated, but it also has grid charging with that on. So cloud cover and that is not an issue. It's we still have enough power to then work with. You can charge from the grid, or we have the solar hubs in which we sell as part of our product. So you can also buy our solar hub and then charge from that also. So, but it's not an issue.
Okay, thank you. There's also a question to you, George, from David. How do you manage defaults on financed motorcycles?
Well, it's an issue. Yeah, it's definitely an issue. We do ensure that we're able to retrieve the assets and then we allocate it. That is the way that we can go. But it's still an issue. It's an early ecosystem. These are some of the issues that we encounter. We are hoping that we could deal with it going forward more on that. But for now, we retrieve our assets and reassign to a different client.
There's an interesting question. No one is talking about e-mobility on water. Warren.
I think I'll just again throw this back to the audience, and this was really around why there isn't enough of an uptake on the business models that they're trying to prove out with their commercial vehicles. Even before we speak about e-mobility on water, I'm not an expert on that. I think we should have had someone on that speak about it. But I'll just divert the question to also, have the opinion of Joseph as well as George on what sort of challenges are they experiencing. Maybe expand a bit more about their financial challenges as well, and if there are any technical challenges to deploying their commercial vehicles in the market. So Joseph and George, you may also respond to that. But apologies if you asked about mobility on water. We'll have an expert for that maybe for the next session.
Okay, thank you. On the challenges we are encountering in deploying our commercial vehicle, the major challenge we have here in Nigeria, number one, is finance. The users like the vehicles, but most of them don't have the capacity to buy it. Our vehicle is a little bit, in time of cost, it is a little bit costlier than the other vehicles you see on the road. So compared to the other buses, our own is a little bit, because it comes with a lot of other facilities, and is in time of size, the headroom, the legroom, every other thing make our own to be a bit expensive. And because of the lack of access to finance by the commercial vehicle users, it makes it a little bit difficult. So we on our own, we've gone ahead to discuss with some financial institution on how we can form a tripartite agreement where those people, we can link them together, bring the people that want to buy, bring the industry, because some that want to buy it, they may not necessarily have the equity. So we've done that, and we've been able to sell a law by entering into some contracts with some of the users. So there's a platform, especially in Nigeria, they call it GIG Mobility, where they have something they call enterprise partners. The enterprise partners, the partners will come, put vehicle in their system. What we do is, if we trust the system, we on our own can take the finance and release those buses to them while they are working, and the system will be paying us back. That platform will make sure they pay us back, because before they can withdraw their vehicle, they let us know. These are part of the innovative way we have been trying to use to face these challenges. Part of it also is what we discussed earlier. We are trying to look at those intervention funds where we'll be able to get where we'll be able to access those intervention funds that come at 9%, 8%, 9%, 10% maximum, so that we'll be able to produce at a lower cost and then be able to lower our costs a bit, and then be able to compete in the market. Really, is the sourcing for finance is a bit difficult. It's a bit difficult in Nigeria, and these are the way we have been trying to do it. Also, we've discussed with some users whereby we release vehicle to them and allow them to pay over a period of 6 months. Make some down payment, we deliver to you. Then after a period of 6 months, you start paying. So by so doing, we are the one taking the responsibility for the finance while they'll be able to access the vehicle. These are part of the things we we are trying to do to ensure that we find a solution to the financial challenge we are having in Nigeria.
Thank you, Joseph. We have a question from Andrew, who is asking, what are the expected benefits of ACFTA in terms of electric mobility regulations and standardizations? I believe Andrew is talking about the African Continental Free Trade Area. So is there anybody who would like to take that question? George, do you have something to say?
If I may comment, I know in Nigeria,
Okay.
we have, if I may comment, I know in Nigeria, we have NADDC, which is National Automotive Design and Development Council. So we had discussion with them, and they said it's part of, they are working with the African organizations to ensure that we can expand the e-mobility across Africa, so that the benefits, they can work, African countries can work together on this. But it's still, to us, it's still at discussion level. We had that discussion with them. I can't specifically say what they've done, the steps they've taken. Is it in time of policy? Is it in time of finance? Is it in time of creating the market? I cannot say, but for us, these are the advice we have given to them. If they want to work with other African countries concerning this. Looking at the area of having the right policy, having good finance, and then create the markets for them. But for now, I don't think there's any concrete thing they've done to my understanding.
Okay. Thank you.
For the sake of time, maybe we can also have any last recommendations from the panel and sort of their recommended next steps before you can summarize the session.
Well, to come in here, for me, my last wording will be on, I think the issue about adaptation of e-mobility cannot be discussed without discussing financing. And it's appropriate that we find ways and means that we provide affordable financing mechanism or instrument that propel mobility, e-mobility in particular, on. The AFTA agreement is a good agreement. It provides a bigger market for innovative startups like us. And if taking advantage, it could be a very key propeller for accelerating the growth of e-mobility in Africa. But still, I think we need to stick with that and holistic approach to finding innovative financing to allow one, production, and then two, the consumption of this innovative or e-mobility solutions that we are providing. So that'll be my last word.
Shall I? Yeah, thank you. Sorry, Joseph.
Okay, my own recommendation will be for e-mobility to be able to, for us to make a big impact in e-mobility, especially in let me use Nigeria as an example. We really need government support. We need government support. It's not what private sector can do or drive alone. The government support have to come in time of policy, in time of creating the enabling environment. I will give an instance. Even if the private sector individual want to invest in e-mobility, if you are not part of the system or you don't develop the shock absorber that you can use in time of I don't want to say failure. In time of when there is policy somersaults, when government come with this policy and you are trying to work with that, in 1 year, 2 years down the line, another policy come and totally negate the initial one. It means you have to go back to the drawing board. What you have been doing, what you are working on, become immaterial again. You have to start afresh. So I will give an instance. There was a policy with Finance Act of 2020, which now puts the duty on SKD, CKD, and the completely built vehicle from foreign country, the duty are the same. So what that means is that you that are going to invest in the system and you are doing all these things, create employment, doing everything, you just realize that you are just wasting your time, you are just wasting your energy, and you are just wasting your resources. Rather, somebody can just go out there, buy it complete build and bring it in and start selling. So when you have those kind of policies somersault, it doesn't encourage investment. So that's why I said we need government on their own to start coming out with policy that are a long-time policy, or you can tweak it here and there, but long-time policy that if every government that will come in, we key into and see how we can work together to make sure that e-mobility is thriving in Nigeria and indeed in Africa. So part of the policy can be how to create the market. There is a policy in Nigeria that says government agencies should patronize locally assembled vehicles. But we know that when you look at the road and you look at vehicle purchased by government over the year, you can see that up to 90-95% of them are not those one assembled. So a lot of things that they need to follow and implement. So it's depend on government. Again, we know the cost of infrastructure. If you want to put in place charging points, there is no way we can invest in equipment, invest in vehicle, and still be the one to invest in infrastructure. That is the charging point. And currently, that's what we are doing. We are the ones still doing that investment. In developed countries, other countries are looking at what can they do. US, for example, they are trying to invest a lot into this, in this area of e-mobility. Africa, Nigeria, government need to do something about how to encourage investment in this area, because nobody's going to buy EV, nobody's going to buy electric vehicle if they are not sure of where they are going to charge it. It's just like if there is no filling station in the country, nobody's going to buy ICE because it's just going to be of no use. So the same thing we are saying, we need this kind of investment, and government need to encourage people to invest, because nobody will want to come and invest millions when you know that you can just wake up and the old policy will change. Thank you.
Thank you. Colin, I think last but not least.
Thank you, Trish. I think Joseph raises a great point. This is the second thing that we've all discussed, was the supporting policy as part of the sort of ground infrastructure that you need to build a successful any successful business, not least e-mobility. Your question, Tricia, I think was takeaways and what can we do? I think it's pulling all of the partners together, perhaps through institutions like IMDA, AEMDA, and using this platform in order to work together to influence policy that helps all of the different companies, rather than trying to go into public policy as an enabling part of the infrastructure. As Joseph rightly says, this will encourage financial investment, allowing us to finance these EVs. Thank you.
Thank you. Warren, I see we have so much discourse and so much conversation happening. So maybe we can have a forum for conversation on a later date and a place to discuss such topics. But I'd like to thank you very much to our speakers for the valuable insights on innovative business models for financing commercial electric vehicles. I think we can all agree that we have to work together, from the e-mobility innovators, the policymakers, and the adopters. So conversations like this are definitely a step forward. So I think, Warren, we need the conversations on water, on e-mobility, on water transport, e-waste management. But it's good. This is just the beginning, and we'll just continue to grow and expand. So thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of the day. I think I'll give it back to you, Warren.
Thanks again, Tricia, and thank you to Joseph, George, Colin, for your support and contribution in the event. And thank you all guests for attending this event. We still have another hour of presentations, and the next presentation will be around PayGo as a tool for accessibility in the Africa EV transition. So we welcome you to still hang on, because we're just switching out the panelists. We'll have representatives from Untapped, from Zembo, from Steamer Border, as well as M-Copper Solar. So please allow us a minute, grab a glass of water as we switch out. This is going to be a really interesting session as well. And we're going to get some valuable insights around PayGo in e-mobility.